Hello, there's a topical story going on at the moment that I thought would make a good subject material to discuss. Um, Basically, there is an American YouTuber by the name of Logan Paul. If you follow his channel, you'll of course know about him. I must admit I hadn't heard of this guy until the recent news story involving him, and that is that he and his team or whatever his friends were in Japan and they visited the infamous suicide forest. It's one of the world's suicide hotspots, and it's a forest that's said to be haunted, among other things, because it's a place where people go to end their lives. I forget the name of the place. It begins with an A, but that's immaterial. The point is, this place is well known for being a suicide hotspot, and apparently, the guy came across a corpse, a deceased person, and he responded in a very crude and flippant manner. I obviously haven't seen the video because it's been taken down, but that's the impression I get. Now, disclaimer at this point, I know nothing about this guy. I've never heard of him before. I've never seen any of his videos, so I don't really have a basis to go on in terms of what his history is. And it may well be that he has long had a reputation for being a shock jock. My impression from the very little I've seen of him is he's a bit of a what we would call in the UK a Jack the Lad. Probably a bit of a frat boy would be the American expression. But the apology that I saw, I consider myself a relatively good judge of body language, and it seemed genuinely sincere to me. Basically, there was a big backlash over this. People were understandably angry over the fact that he was being so insensitive around, whoever this was that took their own lives, that's someone's relative. Um, and him and his mates were just acting like, you know, being very flippant about it and very insensitive. Um, so this is my take. I think there's a lot of things to come from this. I think his apology was sincere. I don't know the guy, I don't know his record, but looking at his body languages in that video, my impression is that is someone who genuinely has been stunned by the backlash and they think this time I've went too far, I was wrong. I didn't see anything sarcastic in the apology. I didn't see anything that was self pitying. It just seemed like a sincere apology. So, in my opinion, people need to move on now and accept he has apologized. The caveat, of course, is will he now change the approach he takes? Will he be a bit more mature about things? Like I said, don't follow his channel. People are saying this will be his YouTube career over, etc. But a thought's occurred to me. I don't know what people will think of this, but how ironic would it be if someone who was making light of a suicide, which was very tactless and lacking compassion, was then vilified to the extent that he then felt put into a corner. I'm not for a second saying this will happen, but what if he was then put into a corner and he felt suicidal because of the online vitriol going against him? Think about that for a second. I actually made that point on the news report and I got 54 likes for it. So clearly, I'm not the only person who's thinking this way. Um, but it gets onto wider issues of the power of internet opinion. It reminds me of a case a few years ago where there was some nurses, I believe it was an Indian nurse, and there were some pranksters who had said something that she would be put through to Kate Middleton and Prince William. It was something along these lines. I don't remember the exact details, but basically it was a prank. And they told the nurse that she'd messed up. Now that apparently led to her suicide. The pranksters ended up getting, well, they were sacked and they ended up with a massive online backlash. It indicates two things to me. Firstly, I've never been a fan of these style of pranks. I think you need to be very careful because what is funny to one person is gambling with another person's mental health. It really is. And I think people, I have no time at all for the sort of pranksters that, for example, humiliate total strangers and so on in the street. I think those people need to have a good look in the mirror. I think it's cowardly. I think it's disgusting, and they certainly deserve criticism. But I also think that when someone has shown genuine remorse, then we, the public, need to accept that. It's one thing if someone is arrogant and they just make excuses for it. But if someone does mess up and they expose themselves for being a very idiotic and thoughtless person, I honestly think if they are showing genuine remorse, then we need to take that at face value. Why? Because I think there's a good deal of hypocrisy. Now, clearly, not everyone would laugh at, a person who's taken their own life, right? But people do respond to shock in different ways. And it may be, I haven't seen the video, but I've seen someone speculate this. It may be that they were genuinely just shocked and that they have a very immature way of dealing with it. It's not justification, but people do respond to things in different ways. And I don't think, from what I understand of this case, that they went out deliberately to find a body. From what I understand, they stumbled across the body. That is different. It is different. If they'd went to a cemetery and say dug up someone's remains and laughed at them, then I'd have no sympathy. But in this case, they stumbled upon a deceased person, and the way they responded was very immature. But would it therefore be the case that these young men, Logan Paul, is going to be vilified for the rest of his life because of something stupid he done um, on YouTube as a young person? I mean, I do have a problem with trial by internet. And I think we have to be very careful not to get into a situation where we play judge, jury, and executioner. And this applies to everyone. I'm including myself in this. There have been times I have been too quick to judge people. I freely admit that. And I think we need to be very careful because there's double standards here. If someone is in the public eye, then we seem to hold them up to some sort of level whereby, I'm including internet public figures here. Apparently, the guy is well known. He has millions of, well, thousands of subscribers. So it's fair to call him an internet celebrity, I guess, a YouTube celebrity. Um, there's hypocrisy in saying they're famous, so they can be vilified if they mess something up. Yet, as private individuals, we would probably get a free pass if it wasn't online. In fact, it's fair to say that there are many things that probably don't go online that are just as bad, but people won't have millions of people judging them. So, the internet and cyberspace in particular, social networks, really are the Wild West. And I do think that you need to be responsible when you, particularly if you have tens of thousands or millions of views, you absolutely have to be responsible. And there are people out there I have very little sympathy for. But I also believe that when someone has made an apology, provided it is sincere, then what more do people want the guy to do? What more can he possibly do? Simply vilifying him at this point, when he has made the apology, what more is it going to achieve? Because then you need to really look in the mirror and say, am I absolutely sinless? Have I in my entire life never said something thoughtless? Have I in my entire life never snapped at someone or said something cruel? I defy anybody, hand on heart, to be saint like. And that's a problem I have with the way the internet is nowadays. We tend to really pillory people for any shortcomings. And we've all done it. I've done it. Without question, I have done it. And I'm acutely aware, in fact, it's sort of one of my New Year's resolutions to tone down how much I interact on social media. But also, too many of us are too quick to rush to judgments about a story without knowing the whole situation. Or we're too quick to judge someone and then present ourselves as holier than thou. And it may be that we won't necessarily do what that person is guilty of, but can we honestly say in our entire lives we have been squeaky clean? No. No one can claim that. So that's why I think we need to be very careful not to be hypocrites. So yes, he was wrong. And if put it this way, if I was a relative of the person whose remains he found, I would be furious. Um, it was right that he had to apologize, but it's worth bearing in mind there are many people in public life who do some appalling things and never apologize. At least he's apologized. And there are people saying it's not sincere. Well, if that wasn't sincere, I don't know how you define sincere. I looked at his body language. He didn't look like he was feeling self pity. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just was trying to do the right thing. That's honestly the impression I got. I might be wrong. Maybe this guy will continue to be a prat. I don't know. But I looked at that video, his apology video, and I believe it was sincere. And all I will say is that when we're online, if you're not a public figure, if you don't show your face, if you don't put yourself out there, but you are really quick to write comments about other people and say this person is evil, this person blah blah blah. I get it. I'm not saying that just judgment is going to go away. I do believe that judgment is part of human nature. There are public figures I deeply dislike, and I have vocally criticized them. So I'm not saying that public figures shouldn't face scrutiny. He would have known that as a popular YouTuber, he does have responsibility. He would have known that. But I do think that we need to accept that we all have human weaknesses. That he who has not sinned cast the first stone. I really think that applies in this case. So that's just something for people to reflect on. Um, Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.